Hey, Carrie, can you hear me okay?
Hello, yes I can.
Great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Sorry, my Zoom decided it needed to update right
That
when
did
I
it to
was
me too.
trying to join. I guess there's a new Zoom update out there. Watch out. Um, Hello, everybody. Mary's not going to make it tonight. She's going to be a new grandma.
Oh,
Ooh,
Yeah,
it's exciting.
That's awesome.
it is exciting. I guess they went to the hospital today, so that's good. But we have a quorum, so that's good. Um, so let's just dig in. Um, Couple of things I just wanted to just note was that Grace said she's going to be getting the, oh, Carrie?
sorry. It just you need to call the meeting to order and inform that the meeting is being recorded.
Right. I'm calling this meeting of the Shutesbury Conservation Commission to order, and it is being recorded. All right, so what I was going to say is that Grace said she's going to be, she may have already done it, getting the bylaw to the Attorney General's office this week. So that's exciting. The other bit of information that is just good is that we still need our fee schedule to be reviewed by the select board and approved by the select board. So I talked to Becky about that, and I think next select board meeting that should be on the agenda to get approved, because right now we're still not charging fees. The town at the special town meeting passed what is it, MGL 4022 or something like that. So that got approved at the special town meeting. So now committees and boards can charge fees, so we can, which we were doing, previously, and then stopped when this was found out by the town. But we do have a fee schedule that goes with our regulations that just needs approval. So that's being done. So that's good. I guess let's move on to approving the minutes. Get out my agenda. We got 3 sets of minutes. Anybody want to make a motion to approve some minutes?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes. Let me just confirm, Beth, those are for 9/27, for December 14th, and one other.
December 21st.
Thank you. I make a motion to approve.
I second that motion.
All right. Harrington,
Aye.
Khan,
Aye.
Wilson, aye.
Well, I'm not used to being the first one.
I think Miriam used to always do it in alphabetical order. I just look at people's faces and say their names. I'm not that organized. I just can't do it. So, what's next? A few things that, again, it's just like, business. We received a Chapter 61 dock application for 56 North Laurel Drive. I think maybe in an email out to you guys, it might have had a different address. Originally, Carrie had thought it was, I think 64 Lake Drive or something. But
Right.
then after, actually looking at the document, we went, oh, wait, no, it's actually for 66 North Laurel Drive. So they submitted that application to DEP. And we also got a dam safety inspection letter for the Lake Wyola Dam. And Carrie told me that she's forwarded that on to Becky. And it's just something that we get CC'd on. Carrie?
I do have a little bit of an update because I talked with her today. She said that the base exam for it was done before and or during the culvert project, and the engineer who had done it retired later that summer. So it kind of got held up for a little bit, but she's reached back out to him to finish it up, and she said it should be ready in about a week or so.
Oh, great. Good to know. And then the other thing that we've received is a National Grid New England Power Utility Maintenance Notice. And again, I don't know, Carrie, if you noticed this, but originally we thought there was 2 because we received 2, but one of them was actually for work in Shelburne Falls. So
Oh.
one of them says for Shutesbury. Yeah.
I didn't
One of
even
them
notice that. I
don't
was
have to
I was
file
more
that one.
I was more concerned looking at the I think there's like different numbers for different like rights of way, so I was like, oh, did I get 2 of the same or 2 different ones? But I didn't even notice that.
Yeah, one of them is not for us.
Huh.
But the one that is for geotech work on the line that crosses Pratt Corner Road. It's geotech work to support future work to, I think, replace a tower. They've been doing this all over the place. It's a lot of the towers are really old on the lines that come through Western Mass. So this is preliminary work for that. It's exempt from us, but they do let us know. They sent a letter, nice map. And the work basically was one boring. I forget how far off of Pratt Corner Road it was, but they're just gonna be drilling one boring to get geotech information. Anybody have any questions on that one? Yeah,
No.
it's exempt. And then the other thing we got was the Camel Brook Bridge project, DCR's project. They're getting ready to do their tree removal, the hazard tree removal that's involved in the project. So it's sort of the first stage of the project, and they put their erosion control up, and they're looking for an erosion control inspection either tomorrow or Monday. If anybody could, I originally had said like I could do it at 4:30 tomorrow afternoon, but not earlier than that. And he said that was really too late. He would like it sometime between 8 and 4. So then he suggested Monday. But if there's anybody, if either of you guys can get there earlier, either tomorrow or on Monday, I could get there by 4, probably. But I thought I would check with you too.
Do they need to be there while we're there? Is there, I could make it, but I really can't make it until over the weekend, and it sounds like they're
Yeah.
interested in getting us there while they're present.
Yeah, the only reason I would think is, I mean, I have his email, so I can find out. The only reason I think he might is just if we want anything changed, we can just tell him while he's there. I suppose if we do it on the weekend and then just email him any changes that, you know, that we want.
Is this the bridge over on New Boston Road, the same one? Yeah. Well, I could make it a priority to hike out that way and take a look at it over the weekend, if that's helpful, but and then I could email pictures, or I could take a video of it.
Yeah,
And with both of you, or however that, but I just, unfortunately, I can't make it during working hours.
yeah. If you have time to do that this weekend, that would be
So I
great.
can,
That
Yeah.
would be awesome.
Get your exercise. Yeah, and then just take pictures and make sure the erosion controls between where the work is going to be and the resource areas.
okay.
That sounds good. I mean, I'll let you know if he would rather be on site. We'll see what he wants to do.
All right.
All right,
Let me know. I'll plan to go.
great. Thank you.
You bet.
That sounds good. And I think we do need to talk about the chair situation.
Yes.
Anybody have thoughts?
I'd like to move to make Beth Wilson our next chair of the Shutesbury Conservation Commission.
Oh, that's so nice.
I
I'm all right with
second.
Great. That works. I think for now, that seems like the best thing to do. I have talked with all of you about sort of sharing tasks. I certainly don't mind, running the meetings and doing especially all the permitting part of it. And Scott has kind of said he's willing to do the conservation land work, which is great because that's like a significant part of it. And then I've talked to Robin and Mary too about tasks that they can take on. So I think that's kind of the best we can do right now, and just try and balance everything and use Carrie as much as possible. Carrie's been great so far. So yeah, I think that's gonna be good.
Yeah.
Thank you. I accept.
Right. Do we need a vote or
Yay.
what?
All right, we need to vote. See, this is why we need you guys. I need you guys now. Yes, Con,
Aye.
Harrington,
Aye.
Wilson, aye. Okay, great, great. Let's see. Something that's more unanticipated business because it didn't get onto the agenda is, we got an email from Kestrel. I don't know if you guys saw that about Ames Pond. It's just about a virtual program that they're gonna do. I think sort of introducing the next phases of their work and just introducing the conservation area. So it's Tuesday. I think I might have the date wrong. I think is it Tuesday, February 13th? I might have to check the email. You guys got the email. I think it's Tuesday, February 13th. Is that a Tuesday? At 12 p.m. And you have to RSVP if you want to go. But I just thought I'd let you guys know about that. Scott, did you have a comment?
Yeah, I think that's great. And just related to Kestrel and the work at Ames Pond, I know they had come earlier and had asked about modifications and mowing, and I think we had left it that this past year we would let them know when we had frozen soil conditions. And I think I had mentioned it to you, Beth, and to Miriam before, but during one of the early freezes, we did reach out and let them know that we did indeed have frozen soil conditions where we could mow without damaging that sensitive wetland. And I think when I had gone out there, it had already been mowed. So I just thought I'd
Okay.
report out to the rest of the commission.
Good to know. Yeah, I remember that whole discussion, and that's all good. Let's see. Nothing else. Nothing else sort of new business or just general Concom business that I can think of. We're gonna have the library project come. Carrie?
I guess the only thing I could share is that after you had sent me the activity log, I put it in Google Docs and I put everyone in there, so we're all sharing it. So any of us have access to it at all times, which I think is gonna be really helpful. I am putting together 2 other Excel sheets. One is for like following applications, like requirements before a public hearing, and then anything that would follow after a public hearing, like specifically for NOIs, like once a order of conditions is sent out. So once I finish that, I'll share it with everyone, so it's all separate things and we can all follow along.
That's great. That sounds really wonderful. Thank you for doing that. That's
Yeah.
great. And were you able to figure out the sharing of the email? Because I still didn't get anything, any email to accept.
So I
that.
did get farther. It finally accepted my phone number as a recovery number, which I didn't even know that was a thing until starting this. But it finally accepted it, so I started putting everyone's emails in, and it said that you were the only one that couldn't verify it. Everyone else I seemingly was able
Oh.
to. I tried removing your email
Dang.
address and adding it again. That was about probably like right before I left, so probably around like 3:30ish.
Yeah, I didn't see anything. I can look, I guess I can look in my spam. Maybe it's
Okay,
going.
yeah, it might be in your spam. I'll resend it right now and hopefully.
Okay,
Because
I'll check that.
once you're able to receive it and accept, then I can have it automatic, so I'm not constantly just forwarding emails all the time.
I
But
know, no, it'll be really helpful.
yeah,
So it might be in my spam, so
okay.
I will
I
check.
agree. It's really helpful.
Yeah. Um, all right, so yeah, we've got the library coming at 7 for their continued public hearing. And then we've got a discussion about the new commissioners.
Hey Beth, I don't know if maybe what we're thinking about some other things at some point, do we need to now circle back once, I'm just thinking after the Attorney General takes a look at the revised, the new bylaw that was adopted. And again, I want to say thank you to you, Beth, for all your work there, at the meeting and answering questions. And, anyways, I thought that it was great to see town government in action where people can stand up and ask questions and kind of work through that. But I'm wondering, once that is completed, if kind of our next steps for looking at our regs and revisions to the regs, and if that's something we need to start, I know we've been thinking about it, but just thinking about what some of our next steps are that way.
Yeah, we will have to update the regs in a few different areas now that the bylaw, once the bylaw is approved, it's gonna take a while, to get the bylaw back from the Attorney General's office, so we have a little bit of time. But we will have to make some changes to the regulations and then have another public hearing for the revised or updated regulations again, and go through the same process that we went through before. But I mean, we can start looking at that. Maybe our next meeting. We're only meeting
thinking-
once a month right now, so March.
Before we get into field season and, gets busy with visits and what have you, but I was just doing a quick look and, I'm not really sure how much of the regulation is gonna need to change because it does, there weren't that many, big changes in the new bylaw from the old, enough that will, I think, result in major changes to the regs, but it would be good just to read through it and talk about that some, just to see areas that we think might have some changes.
Yep, we should do that. And I'll put that on our March meeting agenda. We can start looking at it. Yeah, I feel like the bylaw updates almost reflected a lot of the changes that were in the regulations. So
Yes.
there's not too much, but I know of a couple things. So all right. Yeah, I can't really think of anything else to discuss. Somebody wants to get in.
I did, maybe while we're just maybe covering some other business, you mentioned kind of the land portfolio and management, and I did get a listing of the properties. I think we all did, that the Conservation Commission is responsible for administering. And so I'm gonna kind of dig into those a little bit more. It would be good to know, I don't know if you happen to know, Beth, if there are, a standardized way of reporting or doing site visits or field inspections. I think in the past when I've done it, it's just kind of typed something up and sent them in, and tried to take some pictures along the way. I don't know if MACC or other conservation commissions, I'm guessing, have cracked that nut or have a more of a standardized way of doing that work. And but it would be great to not have to reinvent the wheel if something is already out there that way.
Yeah, well, I know that properties that have conservation restrictions, often the conservation restriction requires certain monitoring, usually annual monitoring, and even a lot of them have forms and everything that are part of the conservation restrictions, or a suggested form. And I know we actually have hired some folks to do our sort of annual inspections of some of our conservation areas. These are, Penny might know, yeah, these are the things you need to dig into, Scott. Penny?
Well, I will just say from my time on the commission, I can let you know that there is a very large notebook about monitoring conservation restrictions with all the previous reports. When Linda Scott was clerk, she put together a form that was used every year, which of course you can modify, but it would prevent you from having to start from scratch. And I think, as you know, those monitoring visits need to happen annually. So, that's a good thing to keep in mind. And just coincidentally, I see that MACC is offering a workshop or a fundamentals training on managing your conservation lands in the near future. So that might be of interest to you as well.
Yeah. And Penny, which conservation lands have we just traditionally hired someone to do?
The only
monitoring?
the only monitoring visit that has been hired out is the one on the Sumner Road property that was owned by Chuck Tamari. And frankly, it was because at that point, all of the commissioners were in their late 50s, 60s, and 70s. And it's a very steep, rocky piece of property. And it was hard. And Charlie Eisman is young and has good knees. So he has been hired. I presume you still did that since I stepped down, but
Yeah.
and
we
that's
did.
all, that information is all in that monitoring folder. Carrie, I presume you know where that is.
Yes, there's, I think, 4 or 5. There's one binder for each one, and they
Yep.
have all the previous monitoring reports and any other detailing.
Exactly.
That would
So
be
it's a good place to start.
great. Thank you. Andy, do you happen to know for the town-owned lands for, like a management inventory or resource inventory?
There has not been a regular ongoing process for that, and it would be a fabulous thing if you started doing that. Super duper.
Awesome. All right,
And,
thank you.
yeah, and I don't really have much information on that. Over the years, we would, when time allowed, go out and visit those, but it hasn't been done in a coordinated way.
Should be fun.
It should be.
And one more question for Penny before, are there any sort of projects going on right now on conservation land that we should know about?
Well, I think you know about the project at what has been sort of informally named the top of the lake, the little piece of land at the north end of Lake Wyola. I think you all are aware of that. That is pretty much done. I'm waiting for the last piece, the picnic table, to be delivered. And then that is finished. I wrote to Miriam, at which I presume she shared with the commission, that I was concerned about all the invasive plants along the shoreline there and was hoping that the commission would come up with a management plan for that. But other than that, the town mows the site at this point. I had an informal agreement with the highway department to stop mowing something like 10 feet from the shoreline, but you may want to review that because a good portion of that is in the buffer zone. So, and then I think many of you are aware of some progress that was made on the Lake Wyola / Southbrook conservation areas to map and assess the trail, the condition of the trails and whether there were good places to connect other trails. And that sort of came to a standstill, I don't know, last year at some point, but both of those were done with CPA funds, and they were projects that I submitted when I was on the commission. And I relinquished them back to you guys at this point. I think there's a dab of money left in the Southbrook one. It's my intent to contact the CPA and just return the rest of that money to the CPA. And then if you want to do something further on that site, they at least when the original grant was applied for, they made it sound like they would be willing to fund another phase of that for actual trail work. So something to think about down the line.
Great.
And then the other properties, you know, have less, we've had less involvement with.
Mhm.
But I'd be happy to talk with you more about all of those at some other time.
Sounds great. Yeah, sounds good. Sounds like a good start. Scott would be the notebook, you know, the notebooks at town hall.
Yep. Yeah.
Carrie,
that's
did you have your hand up?
Yeah, the only other thing I could think of for like conservation land was the newer one, the West Quabbin one. I believe last I remember about it was the parking lot. I don't know if that, I don't think that was finished or anywhere close, but I think a spot was picked last.
Yeah, I'm
Right.
not, I know a site visit happened there last fall, I believe, with a representative from Kestrel. And a
Mm.
number of commissioners came along and there was discussion about where the parking would be. And that is something that should happen this year.
Okay.
And that's CPA funding also.
Yeah, I think yes, you have. I'd
Right.
have to go back and look. It was part of the overall I have to go look. It was a complicated funding scheme. A lot of money from Kestrel, some from the commission, some from CPA. And I don't recall off the top of my head which.
Yeah, I
money
think,
the
so there was
parking
money
comes
that went to buy the property, but then this specific money for the parking lot, I think was CPA, but we can definitely look into
from. I think it's
that.
I think it's more complicated than that.
Okay, yeah,
Yeah, but it's all spelled out in the budget. And I have the budget. It should be in your files as well, since it was co-sponsored with Open Space and Conservation Commission.
yeah. Leslie, I see you have your hand up. We're not, I guess it depends. We're not really taking public comment right now, but if you have something to say about conservation lands?
Yes, I walk that stretch of Pelham Hill Road several times a week. And if there's going to be a site visit organized to look at the parking areas, I'd love to be invited.
Okay, we'll keep you updated. All right, it is almost 7. Any of the commissioners have any more comments before we move on?
No.
No. All right, I think it's close enough to 7. So we are continuing the public hearing for the Shutesbury Public Library. Is there someone here to present? Elaine?
Hi, thank you for taking my comments. I just wanted to start this with the idea that the new Shutesbury Public Library is a project for the public good, one that's been a long time coming. Townspeople have been working towards this point for nearly 30 years. This project has overwhelming community support. It was supported by 83% of voters at town meeting and 70% at the ballot box. The project is also supported by the Commonwealth of Massachusetts through a one-of-a-kind small library pilot project, a grant from the Massachusetts Board of Library Commissioners that's paying 75% of our actual construction costs. The project is also supported by a determined group of supporters who have been fundraising diligently for the past 10 years, and we've raised $520,000, $130,000 in the last year alone. The town has done a lot of work on Lot 032 to prepare for the new library, including 4 rounds of environmental testing, cleanup of debris, and wetlands restoration. The town of Shutesbury doesn't build many buildings, so this seems like a big project, but really it's a modest project. The footprint of the building is 40,400 square feet, Some houses are bigger than that. Lot 032 does have wetlands, and the project impacts the wetlands buffer zone, mostly the outer 50 feet and minimally the next 25 feet. But in preparation for this project, the town has already improved the health of the environment and wetlands on Lot 032. Additionally, various mitigation measures have been proposed to offset the impacts to the buffer zone that this project requires. We will replace many of the trees that need to be removed. We will remove and manage invasive species from the wetland meadow and surrounding forest, and we will remove more surface debris from the site. We've asked for waivers and flexibility for this important town project. The budget for this project is already stretched very thin. We believe that the new Shutesbury Library has already improved the environment of Lot 032, and the public benefits far outweigh the impacts to the buffer zone. The new Shutesbury Library will serve our town for the next 100 years. It is our gift to the future. We're proud of the work we have done to bring this project this far, and we're proud to be a part of a large team of supporters working to make this dream a reality. Our hope is that the commission will recognize the considerable benefits this project offers, ultimately outweighing any potential impacts on the buffer zone. Thank you.
Thank you, Elaine. All right, so where we were at was that the commission had comments, and the applicant was going to respond to comments, and we did receive a letter with responses to comments. And so I'm hoping that somebody, one of the applicants, Fussin O'Neill, can present the responses to comments.
Yes, I can give an overview of the response. I'll just share my screen to show the responses that we provided. And again, my name is April Dorosky. I'm a wetland scientist with Fussin O'Neill, and it has been the wetland scientist on this project since the wetland delineation. Thank you to the Conservation Commission for having us here today. We're excited to continue to move this project forward and just chat about the supplemental information that we've provided, and then happy to answer additional questions after this. So I'll just give an overview of our responses. The first question on my screen is related to the swale next to the Leverett Road. And Mr. Sullivan, the Shutesbury Highway Superintendent, performed a site visit and indicated that swale along the south side does not convey water from the field portion of Lot 032, and the proposed detention basin does not directly connect to that swale along Leverett Road. We do have some kind of site photos showing that swale in this photo 2 area along the edge of the stone wall. The second question was related to the alternative 3 that was included in the notice of intent application. For alternative 3, the roof area is the 7,225 square feet that was reported, with the gross footprint of the building being 6,164. The roof area was reported in the alternatives analysis compared to the gross building footprint, because this is the area that is included in the analysis for stormwater impacts. So that's why there may have been a discrepancy in how those numbers were reported during previous submittals. Question 3. There was a question about providing additional information on the septic design. The septic plan was provided to the Conservation Commission on January 11th and was approved by the Board of Health yesterday. And this plan includes a mounted leaching field, force main, septic tank, and pump chamber. Going to question 4, clarifying information on the tight tank. Again, we just want to emphasize that this tight tank is containment for waste that can't be processed by the septic system. So it is separate from the septic system. but it is part of the proposed project. And lastly, there was a question related to moving trees back to the property to improve the view shed of the library from Leverett Road. We had the landscape architects look at the planting plan again and kind of consider what this might look like. But the landscaping and the planting plan that was proposed was really balancing a lot of different activities and site constraints, thinking about how can we maximize meeting the tree replacement quota, minimizing the limit of work, taking into consideration the solar gain needed for the solar panels on the top of the building, and providing the appropriate space for the trees to mature amongst the other shrubs and plants that were proposed. So based on that, it was thought about and considered, but no alterations to the planting plan are proposed. We're intending to keep the planting plan that was originally submitted.
All
And
right.
stop sharing my screen. We're happy to take any additional questions.
Yeah, my only question is, so originally with sedimentation, basin 3's overflow, you had said it goes into a swale, so that's a different swale that's inside the stone wall.
Yeah,
that-
that's correct. Yep. So it's kind of like it follows the backside of the stone wall, so the non-Leverett side of the stone wall, and it just kind of trails it down into the to the wetland. You can see it on the grading plan. It kind of, the grades make a nice little swale that pushes it towards the wetland. The existing grades, we don't grade it to do that. The existing grades do it.
Share
kind of-
my screen,
yeah,
this area.
Right where your hand was there, April, right in there. It's kind of a nice little swale that follows the back side of that. So it's a separate swale from the swale that's in Leverett Road.
the road
And
drainage, right?
you know, the project doesn't propose to touch any portion of that stone wall. So that portion of stone wall will remain with this project. So the grades in that area will not change as part of this project.
All right, thank you.
Mhm.
I don't have any more questions on those responses to comment. Any other commissioners have any questions or comments? Oh, Scott.
Well, might be tangential, so I'll defer to Madam Chair if you'd like to defer this to later. But I know last time we were talking a little bit about stormwater and how those swales would function. And it just seemed like they were deep enough with the surrounding groundwater that I found myself trying to figure out how they would actually function and remove sedimentation, given how shallow the groundwater is there, and whether or not they would actually percolate in or overflow. And so I'd like to talk, and I think at the time we talked around it maybe, but just getting a refresher on that would help me. And the other things that I've been thinking about since our last meeting have to do with the mitigation that you mentioned, Elaine, at the beginning. The disturbance taking place in the aura and what is actually being proposed for mitigation and what options there might be. I went back and was looking at our regulations here too. And of course, we try to avoid any impacts within the aura, and we're just thinking about how we might consider the mitigation. So maybe a little bit of time just to talk through that a little bit better. But those are the two areas that I'm focusing in on more than the rest of the plan. So thank you.
Well, I think right now would be a good time just to go over the stormwater again. And we did talk at last meeting about the fact that because of the soils, there's not a big chance for infiltration. There's, that's kind of the basis for the design that they have. But I guess you're asking again, sort of, are we concerned about actual groundwater entering into the basins, and creating surface water drainage through that? And then also, I know there have been questions about the 80% TSS removal and if that's going to be achieved, with the stormwater treatment systems and the catch basin. So introduction, how about somebody just go over that one more time with us?
Yes. And I apologize. I didn't introduce myself earlier with the other response. Amy Bell Fussin O'Neill. The stormwater design for this project, under Delaney, who is, Dan Delaney, who's the PE in our office. So the stormwater basins have been designed to have at least a foot of freeboard from the groundwater. So they do not penetrate the groundwater at all. So there's no concern about really having the groundwater seeping into it. And April, right there where your hand is, that's kind of a stone, we'll call it a stone infiltration pit, if you want to call it that. It's an area for the water within the basin to kind of percolate into the stone, into a perforated pipe that outlets into the outlet control structure for the basin. So that's kind of another safeguard for any standing water that might be in the basin, another way for it to be able to escape. Or if by any chance the groundwater does happen to seep into it, that is kind of a catch to also help infiltrate that through the stone and again, and through the perforated pipes that are in there to outlet it to the outlet control structure. Both of the larger basins have that built into it as a feature, and both of the basins have been designed to be at least a foot from the groundwater. As far as TSS treatment and sedimentation, the basins
Can I
themselves.
pause you there just,
yeah, absolutely.
before we move on, Amy, on the, so when you're talking about a foot freeboard there from the groundwater, how I would interpret that would be that then these basins would be dry most of the year then, because they are higher than groundwater, and so you would expect them only to fill temporarily after a storm. They would infiltrate into groundwater and perform that function. They wouldn't have standing water in them.
That is correct. Yep, that is the intent.
That's how they're
That's how they're designed. Yep,
That's how they're designed. So that's what we would, that's what we would expect to see
Yep.
then after completion.
Mhm.
Oh, thank you.
You're welcome. Yes, so due to the high groundwater and the poor soils, infiltration wasn't accounted for in the detention basins. So they aren't designed to provide the sediment removal or the TSS removal. Those are provided by the stormwater treatment structures that are highlighted here in cyan. Those treatment structures were sized per the Mass DEP standards, using flow calculations. And then from those flow calculations, we picked a size that it could accommodate that flow. And then we provided supplemental information to the ConsCom previously about a study from Contact had done the study, but they hired the Florida University to do an independent study for them to show that each of the treatment structures can provide the 80% TSS removal as proposed. And that was provided with the supplemental information letter that was, I believe, April, please correct me if I am wrong, was January 26th.
I believe this one was part of the information to DEP response to their comments. So that was a little bit earlier, January 11th, but the Conservation Commission also has that letter and all the information provided.
There's that's the flow information. We calculated the flow and determines that's the unit, the one their highlight is, which is the one that would accommodate the flow. And then that's the operation and maintenance required for the particular unit we're proposing. And then that is the detail for the unit. That is the mass step that's required by the DEP handbook, and describing the treatment for the unit. And that is the study performed by the University of Florida for contact, showing that the units can provide the 80% TSS removal.
That's 80% plus also you've got the deep sump hooded catch basins that do another 25%, correct?
Yes, that is correct. I didn't include those in the treatment train because I kind of thought of those as a pre-treatment prior to the stormwater treatment structures, but you are correct. The catch basins will provide 25%.
Okay.
Are the
That's-
stormwater questions answered? Sorry.
That's
Um,
helpful for me. I don't know if you had more, Beth, or others.
No, I'm all right with that at this point. And we should talk about the mitigation. I'd also like to go through each of the waiver requests. I don't know, maybe we look at the waiver requests first and then the mitigation just kind of goes along with those. And I don't know if people feel like, do I need to read each of the waiver requests to folks? It could be helpful. So just to generalize, this project has impacts to the buffer zone, which in Shutesbury we call the aura, and is a resource area. And they have some impacts that are within the 50-foot setback, which is sort of our no disturb. So because of that, then we're looking at mitigation. And also for those reasons, the application includes some waiver requests. And I think it would just be easier just for me to read them. The first one has to do with stormwater management. It's section 7.246 of our regulations say that all footing drains and all stormwater outfalls must be at a minimum outside the 50-foot inner aura and must be shown on all plans. So that's one waiver request that they're asking for. And the second one kind of goes along with it. The second one just basically is the aura in general. Section 643 of our regulations says the first inner 50 feet of the 100-foot aura measured horizontally from a resource area specified in Article 1 is considered a no disturb protection area. No activities or work other than passive passage, resource area enhancement, and construction of Title V septic systems are permitted within the first 50 feet of the aura. So that's kind of what they're asking for, a waiver. And the application presents how the project avoids, minimizes, and mitigates for these things, mitigating for the actual impact into the aura, but avoidance meaning trying to avoid doing any work in resource areas, and minimize meaning putting effort forward to minimize impacts to resource areas. And let's see if I can find a few of those things to share with you. The avoidance and minimizing.
I wonder, Beth, if, I'm sure the applicant could speak to that too, but so within that first 50 feet, is it about 15,000 square feet or so of disturbance that's being proposed? And I think generally speaking, we ask people to avoid and minimize, and so I'm taking it that this 15,000 feet is after, trying to avoid and trying to minimize. So then it really comes down to mitigation. And so I'm wondering what, if it is about 15,000 square feet, then what is the mitigation offset for the aura impact of that? And I'm
Right,
sure-
so, I mean, I can't, let's let them answer these questions.
Yeah, I'm happy to share my screen and go through this a little bit more.
Thank you.
So just to give an overview again on the impacts, there are no permanent structures within 0 to 25 feet, but there are some landscaping and site amenities and stormwater management within 0 to 25 feet. Between 25 and 50 feet, really 25 and 100, that's where the majority of the impacts are. And we did outline how that also kind of breaks down for square feet of tree removal. In terms of thinking about the avoidance, minimization, and mitigation measures, this is presented in table 4.1 in the notice of intent. And a big part of that was that no work is proposed in the wetlands at all. The site limit of work was really manipulated, refined to keep it as tight as possible, knowing that there are wetlands flanking almost every side as you come into this site. So that was kind of one of the site constraints that we were working with. And it's known that this site is historically developed and degraded. There used to be a 3-car garage, a homestead there, essentially a tree farm. And so the idea was that this library would go within the area of the previously degraded and disturbed footprint. And that area is essentially all the aura. So unfortunately, it was impossible to keep the impacts outside of the aura. But the idea was keep it within that already primarily cleared front portion of the property, minimize tree removal, because whether that's in the aura or other resource areas, trees are valuable. So as a second avoidance measure, we have maintain 0 to 25 foot aura with no permanent structures. And what went into that was a lot of shifting of the design layout. And this is kind of just what happens in the background, but we just wanted to make sure that this was taken into consideration. Every decision was made with a lot of thought and care to try and move the limit of work as far away from the wetlands as possible. So there was a portion of a footpath that was originally proposed on the west side of the building that was removed just to keep it outside of the aura area, and reducing a landscape space between the library building and parking lot. Used to be 25 feet, was shifted to 15 feet. And again, that was just to scrunch the footprint of work a little bit smaller. In terms of minimization measures, like I mentioned, performing the work within the previously disturbed footprint, really maintaining existing vegetation as much as possible. And how that happened was consideration of kind of the size, orientation, and setback of the library. How far is it from Leverett Road? Is it diagonal? Is it straight on? There were multiple different renditions behind the scenes considered while designing this library. And what has come before the Conservation Commission in this application is really the best design and the layout that we could provide to kind of balance all of these features within the constraints of the site. In terms of mitigation measures, in preparation of coming to the Conservation Commission with this project, we submitted a separate notice of intent for, I'm skipping, for the BVW 2 and 3 restoration. And that's something that was kind of completed as a separate project, but knowing that the library would be coming down the line, but as a brand new activity, sorry for the scrolling here. In BVW1, we're proposing some kind of minor meadow enhancement. So right now, that front meadow area is just a grassy area with kind of the standard lot of grass mix that used to get mowed on a regular basis, but as part of that BVW1 meadow enhancement, that would be installation of native plugs. So it would increase the diversity of species within the wetland itself. And so that mitigation is really enhancing the wetland, and the aura is protected essentially to protect the wetland. And so we're seeing this area as enhancing the wetland itself as a really valuable way to mitigate for the impacts within that aura.
Could-
Um,
April, could
yes.
you, is there any quantification to that? How many square feet of BVW1 are you looking to revegetate? And
yes.
is there more to that? I know simply putting plugs out sometimes they're oftentimes don't take, especially in disturbed sites. And I'm just wondering what more specifically your plan is to go into that.
Yeah, this area amounts to this 6,605 square feet that was reported on the WPA form, and that's the portion that's proposed for planting the plugs. And that is this yellow hatched area for BVW1 enhancement. And I'd have to double check, but we specify, I think it was 5 or 6 trays of plugs of native species to be installed within this BVW. So it's already vegetated. So installing plugs was a way to really enhance the diversity of the vegetation without disturbing what's already there. I'll just keep this figure up because I think it's a lot easier to understand the other mitigation measures. Installing bird boxes and bat boxes really around the front of the property. Again, just another way to bring in wildlife to this area. But as you have bird boxes, they fly over, their droppings also can import different seed species to kind of add to the diversity to the area. In addition, providing some invasive species removal. There's kind of the standard lot of invasives, especially in the front of the property. I know there's some Japanese knotweed out there, multiflora rose, oriental bittersweet, and a couple more. So again, that would be an improvement over existing conditions. And we know that there is still trash and debris refuse on the site. So the plan would to be, remove trash and debris that can be removed manually, by hand, and make sure that the site is cleaned up from kind of historic use of the site and just some debris that's been left there. And lastly, the BVW2 restoration, that little BVW on the side, on installing some wetland plugs in that area also to, again, just help that area revegetate that was previously underwent some restoration processes and is in need of a little bit more help to revegetate. So really the avoidance, minimization, mitigation measures are, we thought providing as much as possible, coming from all angles, from thinking about wildlife, trash removal, enhancing that BVW1 wetland itself. We thought all of these were appropriate and feasible for the town to include in this project.
Great, I have
Great.
the invasive removal, is that only going to be within that yellow hatched area, or is that going to be the whole site?
We have it proposed to be within this dotted black area. So really
Okay.
the front portion of the site, which generally encompasses where the library work and kind of immediately surrounding area would occur.
Okay. And my other question with the plugs, you've got both wetland plugs and upland plugs listed, and I was wondering, since it's a wetland area, why are you including the upland?
Understand it sounds suspect. That area is highly disturbed and I delineated it and it was an incredibly difficult delineation. And I do think that depending on what type of year we have, whether it's a drought or a wet year, including both wetland and upland plugs will really be the best idea to make sure that there's a variety of species that survive. Because that area is really just so variable. You can look at it and not think that it's a wetland, but it is holding water. So because as shown by the hydric soils, but based on my time on that site, and I spent a lot of time there, I think, and this species that I've seen come up since mowing has ceased, I think both wetland and upland species could survive.
Yeah, I think so too. And I think I brought this up last time, and I think it's something we should talk about with folks from the town who are here and other commissioners, is the invasive removal. You know, you do it once, and so the way it's written in the NOI is done until the order of conditions is done. So really, that's probably only once, maybe twice. And that sometimes just doesn't do it for invasives, you know, they will just keep coming back. So I think one of my questions would be to the town, if there's going to be annual mowing, if there can also be some sort of annual invasive removal. And again, we could maybe limit it to a certain area. We can think about that a little bit, but it's just something I'd like to kind of propose. Elaine, would you like to respond?
Yes, I would, because I'm also on the Recreation Committee, and we've been working with some consultants and talking about having workshops on invasive species removal. And so this would be a really great project to have as an ongoing community project to keep this going, and so that people not only help the site, but also learn about invasive species so they can work on their own properties. So we have been working on this.
That sounds great. That sounds really good. Scott, you had a question, and then Penny.
Yeah,
Scott.
thank you. Just maybe a confirmation and a statement. I just want to make sure I'm tracking. So there are about 56,668 square feet of impact that you're saying after we avoid, after we minimize, that's what would need to be mitigated, of which, of that 58,668 square feet, within the 100-foot aura, 16,716 square feet are permanent alterations, structures, building, paved areas, that type of thing, right? And for that, and some of the other ones are maybe a bit more temporary, landscaping and what have you, but even if we took the smaller of the permanent alterations, the about 17,000 square feet, we're proposing here about 8,000, about half, a little less than half of enhancement to the existing wetlands to offset that larger 17,000 square feet. And I just want to make sure that I'm tracking if that is in fact correct. I know the bird boxes and bat boxes, I'm setting that aside, because I really don't see those as mitigation for wetland impacts. I think they're nice things to do, but I don't see them offsetting some of the functions and values laid out here in the bylaw and the regs. And so I'm just wondering if my understanding is actually correct, and then if that's true, then are there opportunities here to think about things a little bit more robustly, not mowing BVW1 at all, maybe, letting that come back, or maybe wetland restoration or enhancement activities elsewhere on this site, or on other sites here in town. But I think that's my biggest area of concern, is around the mitigation, if my understanding is correct.
I will say, just looking at this figure, the library will be generally in this front portion. So that's where the impacts are. If you take our area of invasive species monitoring and removal, and if the commission wants to add a condition related to ongoing maintenance of that, I think the applicant would be open to that. But this invasive species management area is for a much larger footprint than the total footprint of work. And same thing with the trash and debris removal. That will extend, almost over halfway through the parcel. There's really, as far as I remember, there's not much trash at the bottom portion of the parcel. That's also why it's focused in that upper portion. But if we're just talking about net areas, really the mitigation that's between trash removal and invasive species removal is much more expansive than the limits of work. Of course, they can be considered as, being weighed differently, but if you're just talking about net area, this is certainly a lot larger. That's, of course, how the commission weighs that is a calculation for the commission to make. But that's why we've also included this BVW1 enhancement, adding the plugs in, because we're not directly impacting any wetlands, but we are directly enhancing some wetlands as a brand new mitigation activity. And yeah, there's been discussion about cessation of mowing. But as many of you know, Shutesbury is 90% forested, and it's a beautiful landscape. But this area is seen as actually an opportunity to provide a herbaceous habitat, which is not as common in Shutesbury. So providing that on this site where maybe people going to the library can enjoy that more diverse herbaceous habitat and maybe see a little bit different variation of wildlife using that area than they're used to, was really part of why there's the mowing regimen is really just once a year to keep it herbaceous instead of turning it into the forest. Keep that more diverse landscape type.
Can I ask April, just as follow up to that, and thank you. I do think the wetland, that herbaceous wetland characteristic that you're talking about, could be maintained with less than annual mowing. And I'm wondering if that had been considered by the applicant to have less frequent than annual mowing as mitigation. The invasive species that you mentioned over that dotted area, I'm still not really sure how many square feet and what invasives you're talking about within there, and what that would look like before or after. So it's hard for me to quantify that as mitigation. And the trash and debris removal, I'm wondering, is that not required if it's in wetland to remove that, or that could just remain there? So removing the trash from that was placed in these wetlands, where you're saying that would count as mitigation here as a wetland enhancement?
Yes, that trash and debris removal in the wetlands and the aura and beyond that would count as wetland mitigation. It's not required as part of the project under the bylaw or the Wetlands Protection Act. We're not touching any wetlands, you know, disturbance wise as part of this project. It's just an enhancement. So the removal of any of that debris that might be there now is not required. So it is
So that's-
mitigation.
That trash and debris within the wetlands, has that been quantified? How much and where?
It has not been quantified. I know the previous chair did have kind of logging of locations of where there were observations of debris throughout primarily the front of the site. So the thought was that we would use that as a guide and make sure what can be removed by hand was removed as, again, an overall site cleanup and benefit, whether it's in wetlands, aura, or beyond.
I'll defer to others here with their hands up. Thank you.
Yep. Robin?
Oh, I just wanted to say when things, you start organizing the removal of the invasives, I'm here to volunteer. Put me on the list.
Great. Thank you. Penny?
Well, follow up on what Robin said and what Elaine said. In the past 2 years, I've spent a lot of time on the site. Just about every invasive you might imagine, I have found in the disturbed portion of the site, which is where we're talking about working. And I agree with those who have said it can't be a 1 year or 2 year or 3 year thing. It needs to be an ongoing thing. I am certainly committed to that. And I know there's a group of us who have worked on these kinds of things and maintained gardens for a while who are willing to do the work that needs to be done to make sure that those are removed from that site. I can tell you where the yellow spot is that is highlighted on the map. That is full of bittersweet. And the fact that the field hasn't been mowed for the past 2 years has allowed that to spread. It's probably, you can't see it easily when you walk out there because it's so tall, it folds over. They're 12 feet tall at this point. My goal, I had pushed to try and get it mowed this fall. I don't want to see that go to flower and to seed and then spread further. But I am definitely committed to this, and I know there's a team of us who would be willing to work on this project. And of course, we welcome others who have an interest in such things. The other thing I just wanted to say quickly is all of the landscaping, just, it hasn't been mentioned tonight, but all of the landscaping associated with the library project is entirely native plants. And so that is a big improvement for this site. If you look at the site now, what you see when you look at it visually is a pine plantation or a spruce plantation that it's Norway spruce and blue spruce. I'm sure it was planted for Christmas trees. It would, in my mind, be a big improvement to get those out of there and replace those with native trees and shrubs. And then up front, the largest trees on the site are trees that were associated with landscaping the old homestead, again, not native trees. So that's improvement in the aura as well, not in the wetland, but in the aura. So I hope you consider that as well as you ponder this.
Thank you,
Which I
Penny.
thought.
Just a couple comments on the invasive. I think it, just to answer some of Scott's questions, I think it would be pretty easy to calculate the square foot of that shaded area in the other figure that we were looking at that shows how much of the site will be treated for invasives. And then what else was I going to say about that? I think in the NOI it mentioned an invasive removal management plan that would come before the Conservation Commission for approval, because we haven't really talked about how the invasives are plan to be removed, but it sounded like that's a document that's down the road a little bit.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think that's helpful, Beth, and I appreciate what you said, Penny, as well. I think, my own experience removing bittersweet, I think repeated mowing actually can cause it to sprout more. And so I do think having the plan actually would be helpful just to wade through.
Yeah. All right. Mary Lou, you've had your hand up for a long time. Is it related to what we're talking about and relatively brief?
Yes, hopefully both. If I could back up a little bit in the very beginning. Okay, my name is Mary Lou Wanio. I live on Wendell Road. I'm a member of the Lot 032 remediation group. And thank you, Beth, for recognizing me. My question, if it's kind of backed up, but Miss Elaine was beginning to talk and she said something that caught my attention. She said the benefits far outweigh and I can only assume she was talking about the harms to the wetlands. Okay, so to me, it sounds like you, the Conservation Commission, are being asked to build this building anyway, in spite of the harm that we know is going to be caused to the environment. And one more thing for Miss Carey, there are a lot of people here like KT, then there's Bob, there's Jeff, there's a capital M Mark, a lowercase Mark. I'm curious for them to be declared by full name. Thank you.
Yeah, that would be really helpful if people can put their full names in their windows so that we can include you in the minutes. Thank you. Mary Lou, your hand is still up. Are you done?
Yes, Beth, I was hoping for some kind of response to my concerns.
Oh. Yeah, so I think in general, again, this project has the impacts in this project are in the buffer zone in the aura. And the impacts are spelled out. We've been talking about square footage of impact within the different distances, what is within 25 feet of the wetlands and what is within 50 feet of the wetlands, and that's all discussed in the notice of intent. And then we've been talking about the mitigation for those impacts, and we've also been talking about even getting to that point, how the applicant tried to avoid and minimize any impacts to the resource areas or the buffer zone. And that's all sort of just the way the regulations work, and that's how they go. So, we're sort of in the middle right now of talking about mitigation for those impacts. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, does mitigation mean accepting? Is mitigation an acceptance? I mean, I'm not clear. To me, as a lay person, do you know what I mean? I don't understand your lingo. I don't know what your numbers and half of the words that you're saying even mean, except from the beginning, when I heard that the benefits, granted, I love libraries, books, etc., far outweigh, and then it sounded like you, the Conservation Commission, are being asked, in spite of the harms we know are going to be caused to the environment, please let us build this building in this area. Okay, so thank you. Thank you,
Yeah,
Beth.
I mean, I don't think, it's wonderful to hear that it's going to be a wonderful library. And yes, we're all excited for a library, but at least I don't, and I'm assuming the rest of the commission, we really look at the wetland impacts. We look at our regulations, we look at the state regulations, and we go by that map of how, the these are the impacts. Are they actually in a wetland? Are they in the buffer zone? What does that mean? And then mitigation means if there is, 10 square feet of impact to a resource area or a buffer zone, then you kind of look for something to be given back for that. That's, I guess, the best definition for mitigation. So that's what we're talking about. Hope that helps. I guess we'll move on. Erin?
Hi, thank you. My name's Erin Jock. I live at 449 Montague Road. I want to say, just in general, looking at the site, it's a tough site, and I think that the design sort of bends around the wetlands to the degree possible. It's obviously it's a tough site, and so I think to the degree that has been possible, the designers have done a pretty decent job trying to sort of make the project conform to the site limitations. Is it perfect? I mean, obviously the encroachment to the wetland is tough, but I think it's overall pretty good. I think the one comment I have is looking at the stormwater report. The TSS removal worksheets don't really accurately reflect what's going on in terms of stormwater treatment. There's like stormwater treatment structures and 80% listed. And I think it would be really helpful to see those TSS worksheets updated to accurately reflect the BMPs that are proposed on the site. So based on the stormwater management plan, there are stormwater treatment structures as well as what appear to be extended dry detention basins. And I know catch basins were mentioned as well. I didn't see them called out specifically in the stormwater report, but if those were listed as they should be, as pre-treatment should be listed first and then the secondary treatment listed second, I think that the treatment might reflect higher numbers in terms of TSS removal. So I just wanted to note that because I don't think that the TSS removal worksheets that I saw as originally submitted really accurately reflect the amount of stormwater treatment that's on this plan. I don't really have an opinion one way or another about the library, just looking at the site constraints and the stormwater. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you. Just to follow up on that, does including the deep sump hooded catch basins and then storm scepters, does that straighten that out a little bit for you, Erin? Or
I mean, I see that there are multiple systems in each treatment train, but what I'm saying is they're not reflected on the TSS removal worksheet. So the TSS removal worksheet simply lists stormwater treatment structures. So what it should be is there should be a list in that TSS removal worksheet. The first one should be deep sump hooded catch basins, 25% TSS removal, followed by stormwater treatment structures, which are the Contech proprietary systems, which, whatever 40 to 80% or 50 to 80%, I don't know what the treatment is for those because they're proprietary, but that should be listed next. Those are both pre-treatment. Then should be the extended dry detention basin, which has a 50% TSS removal. So when those are taken all together, the TSS removal, that should accurately reflect the TSS removal, which is pretty substantial here. And then the other piece is for the stormwater treatment structure that's to the south, I think the southernmost one, it looks like it's only capturing roof drainage. But I could be wrong about that. The one that's to the southwest maybe of the building, it looks like it's just capturing roof drainage.
all right, well, let's let Amy answer. I think she's got her hand up. She's ready to go.
Yes, no, I appreciate you pointing those out. I'll start with the detention basins. They weren't necessarily designed as extended dry detention basins. Those require a little more extensive design, and so that's why the credit wasn't taken for those. Because they are really just designed as detention basins to hold peak flows. Now, to say that they will never provide, TSS removal, as we all know, it will collect, settlement over time, as any type of tape basin does. The credit just isn't taken there because in the eyes of DEP, they don't see detention basins as, capable of removing TSS. The catch basins, you are correct, they do provide the 25% TSS removal. They weren't included in the calculation worksheets that you are discussing, only because it's a pre-treatment method, and that's kind of how it was designed. It was designed to provide pre-treatment for the stormwater treatment structures. And the stormwater handbook specifically states that if it's for pre-treatment, it doesn't count towards the 80% total treatment train TSS removal. So that's why they weren't included in the TSS worksheets. But you are correct in stating that they do provide 25% pre-treatment. So I don't know if that helps clarify.
Yeah,
what you're
I've never
talking
heard
about.
that a pre-treatment BMP shouldn't be included on a TSS worksheet. So that's news to me. I'd be curious to see that, but I'm yeah.
I'm sorry,
and-
I didn't mean to cut you off.
Oh, no, it's okay. And then, as far as the detention basins, I guess I just assumed that they were, so what you're saying is they're detention basins, but they're not a detention basin that meets the DEP BMP manual, sort of design requirements is what you're saying.
Yeah, they're not the extended detention basins that are outlined in the Mass DEP handbook.
And what is it about them that does not comply with the BMP handbook? Is it because they like the sediment forebays or something isn't included in there, or what's the?
Yeah, I don't know fully off the top of my head at the moment what is required in the design of an extended detention basin. But I do know there's like calculation methods of certain different things that need to be included, different design techniques with it as well that need to be included that weren't necessarily included with these detention basins on the site. And as far as the catch basins not being included, the manual does say that most of the BMPs that are outlined within to achieve the TSS removal that those individual BMPs have, they are required to have pre-treatment. So because they're required, because the pre-treatment's required to get the full treatment of each of those BMPs, it can't be included with the treatment that BMP provides.
What you're saying is that in order to achieve the 80% TSS removal that you're claiming, they need to have a pre-treatment BMP, and so it's already being counted in the overall total.
Yes, thank you. That was very, very well explained. Better than mine. Thank you.
Okay, well, that clarifies. Thank you for answering that.
You're welcome.
All right. I see Amanda Alex has her hand up.
Yes. Hi, good evening, everyone. Thanks, Beth. I just want to make a couple of comments in regards to the mitigation, which you guys were just talking about. When Ms. Dorowski was describing the work that was going to be done, no direct wetland impacts proposed and nothing within the 0 to 25 foot aura. That, to me, that's kind of serious. You know, the regulations consider the inner 50 feet to be a no disturb protection zone. So no activities of work supposed to happen there. So if they need to do work there, seems like the commission could actually look for extra mitigation, which I would think would be totally within your rights. And I also feel that a lot of these things that were put forward as minimization and mitigation really, they don't sound like they are, some of them don't even sound like mitigation. The previously disturbed footprint, that's true, but they moved the library up mostly to save money. I've been keeping track of this pretty well, and that was a big reason for the move. It was further back, I think everyone remembers. So that's fine. Maybe it is mitigating, but that's not the reason it was done. So it was going to be done anyway. So to me, that doesn't sound like it should be considered mitigation. The meadow enhancement, you already discussed that. That didn't sound like a lot of work either. It seems like the whole area could have been a meadow for the last 20 years, but it wasn't allowed to be for some reason. So just, if you stop mowing it, that's a really big step in the right direction right there. Doesn't cost anything. Birdhousing, bat boxes, seems like that could be done by volunteers, excuse me, after everything's said and done. And the trash and debris removal specifically seems like something that would be part of any construction project. You clean up after yourself, something comes along that's you need to deal with, you deal with it. Also, there's been a group of people in town very concerned about all the buried trash on Lotto 32 for a couple of years now, and the town has not been concerned at all about removing it. They kind of were claiming that it wasn't even there. So now all of a sudden they're really concerned about getting rid of it so they can get mitigation credit for it. Seems a little off to me. So the impervious surface, I don't know if that was discussed, the asphalt and pile of wood chips, is that in the actual area where the library is going to be built, or is that somewhere else? It is?
It's within the limit of work, yes.
Okay, so that would go anyway. I don't see how that's mitigation. That's going to be removed when you do the work. So, and the previous restoration of BVW 2 and 3, totally unrelated to this. I remember that whole thing. It had to do with lots of trash being buried to the point where the boundaries couldn't be closed. So that's why that was done. I don't think that should be counted at all. That was a separate NOI, separate set of circumstances altogether. Also, I wonder, how is that doing? That restoration, has anybody been, keeping track of it? Is it doing well, or have things died off? Or I just wonder, for future reference, how much work it would be to make sure that all this stuff actually takes. Thank you.
Thank you. Just to answer the last question, I mean, yeah, we've been receiving monitoring reports for the restoration in both BVW 2 and BVW 3. And I think, as April mentioned, part of this project is to do a little more planting in BVW 2. All right, so at this point, okay, Leslie, let's make it short.
Okay, Leslie Luchanik, 61 West Pelham Road. In the trade, avoid, minimize, mitigate. There's been a flaw from the beginning in terms of avoiding. There's never been a very clear, honest alternatives analysis. And generally in the trade, if you're looking at avoiding, you're looking at alternatives analysis. And what the town has done here, they have moved the location of the library closer to the road to save money, to create all these incredible hardships that you as a commission are dealing with now, and an extraordinary amount of impacts to the 50-foot aura. And I find that totally unacceptable. Thank you.
Thank you. Mary Lou.
Thank you, Beth. I just want to echo Mr. Leslie's words. I absolutely agree with him, and I'm pleased that he spoke out.
Okay, thank you. Steve Sullivan?
Yeah, as someone who spent quite a bit of time on that lot, I would like to applaud the library for putting the library in the spot where there was a house, there was a garage, there's roads. They chose a spot that's already trashed. They did not choose to go in divergent area, which there isn't anyway, but they have chosen to go where the site has been worked the most. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, I think I don't see any more hands up at the moment, so I know commissioners, you want to keep going through the waiver requests. I think we should at least read through what's been requested. So we read the first two. The third one, vegetation removal and replacement, section 835 of the regulations, tree stumps within the inner 50 feet of the aura should remain in place to assist in soil stabilization unless otherwise approved by the commission. So I'm assuming that the request is to remove all tree stumps for any of the area of the 50 foot that's being impacted. And I guess my only thought would be if there's any areas that look like they're going to be cleared, but maybe not graded. I understand that if you're going to grade or you're putting in a detention basin or whatever, you obviously have to remove the stumps. But just to take a look and see if there's any spots that are considered part of that impacted 50-foot section that where stumps could be left.
I think that's certainly a consideration. Just I'm going to bring up the site plans again and share my screen. So we have the BVW 1 and 2 outlined in green, and the first 50 feet is this orange dotted line, 25 is red. So really the limit of work, there's either grading or some type of structures, mostly stormwater. There's a portion of the library that is within the first 50 feet around this BVW 1. Same thing looking at BVW 2, just 25 to 50 foot is where the driveway into the library and kind of associated stormwater treatment structures are. So I think that's why we're requesting the waiver. It, as proposed right now, it doesn't seem too feasible to maintain any stumps within 0 to 50 feet just because of the features and the grading that would be within those areas.
Well, what about looking at like sedimentation basin 2, just below the emergency overflow there? There's sort of that area. Well, no, wait, that's I
Maybe
guess
like
the orange. If the orange is the 50,
yes.
like below the emergency spillway, between the erosion control and the orange line is just an area that doesn't have any grading.
Yeah, it's quite possible to install, all of this riprap protection, this pipe. This line is a grading line right here, and this is the emergency spillway that you're talking about. This area will certainly need access of the equipment, and some disturbance to install these features. So,
But
there
like
there
south
might.
right there, like where your cursor is right there going to the south, there's no erosion. I mean, there's no grading between the 50 and where the erosion control is going to be.
Right, like in this area. Yeah.
Yeah.
This is the tree line right here. So this area does not have trees. Actually, the stand kind of follows this area. So,
Yeah.
it's quite limited. And you can even see how we kind of oriented this outlet to try and stay out of 0 to 25. but it is between 25 and 50.
Mhm. Okay, yeah, I just thought I would suggest it, but it might not be feasible anywhere.
Yeah, I understand. A fair point and always worth taking a closer look at.
I think I'm gonna wait to take any more public comment until we get through the waiver section. Do either of the other commissioners have any comments on that waiver request for the stumps? No. Okay. Let's see, the next one has to do with the planting. Commission requires planting of replacement trees or shrubs for trees removed in an area subject to protection by the bylaw and these regulations. Replacement quantities and types may be modified by the commission upon finding of undue hardship or finding that tree removal shall have negligible effects on values, including but not limited to situations where the tree or shrub to be removed was significantly damaged by a storm event and is not likely to survive. The tree or shrub is already dead or the property heavily wooded. So again, this one and the next one are about the planting plan. And so they're asking for waivers from replacements of trees or shrubs that are of similar species and types. And then the next one is trees must be native and non-invasive in Massachusetts and must be of the same general category of the, well, that's where they're saying of the removed tree or shrub. So those are both waivers about the planning plan. Personally, I'm fine with the planning plan. I don't know about the other commissioners, but I think that the numbers and species that were chosen and the locations where they're going to be planted is fine. And actually, the last waiver is also having to do with the plants. Replacement plantings must be installed within 180 days of the day when the existing tree or shrub is removed. So I did kind of want to talk a little bit about this. Again, I'm okay with waiving it, but I think we do need to set some kind of a restriction on when the plantings should be done. I was thinking, and other commissioners, see what you think of something like plantings must be planted within the first planting season following the completion of construction, if not earlier. I don't know, does that make sense to people? Instead of putting a days on it?
I think
Sounds to me.
for me, that sounds good, Beth. I think some quantification of survival, post project, I think would be important. I've seen plantings, fact of the matter is most plantings don't survive, right? After the first year, they often need replanting up to 5 years. Some of them just never take it all. And there need to be modifications to those plans. So I just think some assurance of survival post-project would be important here. And I see Marianne nodding her head, so maybe there's some willingness to look at that.
Yeah, I'm blanking. Was there a management plan for the plantings or follow-up, with 6 months after plantings? Can't remember.
Didn't see that.
Right
No.
now, we don't have anything proposed, but certainly, when it comes time to close out this project and it's completed, that's when all of these plantings would have to also be on site and alive in order for the commission to close it out. And I also saw Marion nodding to considerations of, some type of monitoring. I think it's in really everyone's best interest that the trees survive because they provide ecological function, but also they're beautiful. You'd love to see trees around this area too, especially with the the well thought out landscape plan provided.
And we're also hoping that the Shutesbury Garden Club Committee will help us in this and continue with these monitoring and taking care of these plantings. And they have already told us that they're on board with this.
Great. That all
Mm.
sounds really good.
I'm wondering, Beth, and as we're going through these, but I do, because it seems like we're hitting on these and kind of talking at a high level, that would be good, for instance, to have some quantification, like in a planting plan of, guaranteeing 80% survival 5 years after the project, or whatever that happens to be. Those are some numbers that I've seen used previously. By having some quantification beyond just, talking at a high level, I think is just helpful. So everyone walks into it just knowing what is expected and how it's to be monitored to ensure that success. And we've already talked about, but I think the invasive plan too is the other piece that maybe we'll circle back to that, but it still seems pretty broad for me.
Yeah, there's no defined plan right now about methods and means for invasive species removal, but the intent is, and I think this can be a condition, just to make sure that that's the case, is that an invasive species plan approved by the commission, is approved by the commission before any removal activities start. And that was kind of the intention. There just has to be, of course, thought and that goes into that plan before bringing it to the commission. But we wanted to make sure that that was proposed.
Yeah, I saw that in the NOI, but I guess I didn't see anything about just monitoring growth of the plants for, the first few years to make sure they survive, and then if they don't, if somebody's going to replace them. So conditions. All right, at this point, I guess I want to ask the commissioners if they have any more comments, especially we went through the list of waivers that are being requested and kind of, explained answers to most of them. Any other comments, Scott?
Yeah, I think just to summarize, I think what I'm hearing are that we would need to expound a little bit more on the invasive plan. So what is in that big dotted area, what specifically invasives are there that they're looking to use as mitigation? What is the plan? What will be success? Is it that you do it once and all the invasives come back? Or is it that 5 years from now, we've reduced all the Oriental bittersweet by 80%? I think better understanding if it's to be used for mitigation, what does success look like? And what is the present state that we're mitigating against? And so that's one area that I would help me. I think we've talked about the planting plan and getting that. I think the last one is on the trash removal. I don't think I saw anywhere where, if that too is to be used for mitigation, how many square feet of wetlands are being impacted or aura right now with garbage? What would be the method to remove that? And how many square feet of that would be impacted if we're going to use it for mitigation? I think, again, I'm just looking at about close to 17,000 feet of permanent alteration to wetland aura, and trying to square that with what's being proposed here, knowing that we have lots of other applicants who are going to come before us and maybe want to do similar things, and we want to make sure we're treating everyone the same, looking at those wetland impacts.
Yeah, and I very much understand, what you're bringing up in terms of the trash removal area. we can provide that area that's laid out with the black box, and that does extend beyond the limit of work. So that, just to make sure it's clear, it's not just the trash in the limit of work. Of course, anything that's within the limit of work will be removed during construction, but the really key focus of that is that the adjacent areas within the wetlands and aura will be monitored for trash, and that trash will be removed. So we can provide that number, and also kind of the area, the total area of invasive species removal. If you're, if you think about trash or invasive species, a lot of the times these are points. It's one bush here, it's, one tire here, a can, a wrapper. So if, I think the best we can do here is provide the overall area, but if we were to tabulate, every square area of a gum wrapper that was left on site, it would be a little bit difficult. So it's really the overall area, and we know that this area, especially in the front, has invasive species, and that there's a higher density of trash in the front of the site. So that's why it's proposed there. And that's really the area that we want to make sure is cleaned up.
I think, April, that's helpful, and I think you're demonstrating my point in that, I think for the 16,700 square feet of impacts, if it were that, we're going to go out to remove a gum wrapper and a tire and call that clean, and as mitigation for that, or remove the one or two invasives and call that mitigation. I don't think that's what I don't think that's what you're proposing. I think what you're proposing is something more substantive than that. But since it's not defined, I think that's what we're just talking around here. So I think having it more defined would help everyone understand what is actually being proposed for mitigation.
Yeah, and I guess, as much as I can clarify verbally, is that for the trash removal, the idea would be that people walk out around the site in the front, and things that are seen, visually observed, and can be removed by hand will be removed from the site. I think the town could be open to a condition saying that this has to happen within 1 year of construction within that area, covering that front portion of the site. And that's a better way to define timing surrounding that area. And same thing with the invasive species removal, invasives that are observed in that area. And a survey now might not reflect what that might look like after construction season. But there are known species there, and I think again a potential condition could say, the invasive species plan has to be submitted and improved by the Conservation Commission, including, a list of invasive species, the means and methods, the time of year that they are to be removed, and the frequency. And that would be a way to kind of dictate what information the Conservation Commission is receiving related to that, in a way that can be approved, and the town can kind of work with the commission to make sure that it's appropriate. And that's really the point. We want to make sure that the commission approves of that invasive species removal, because you're right, the means and methods and timing frequency aren't defined right now, but there's certainly a good faith effort to make sure that the invasives are removed and monitored and managed on a regular and meaningful basis.
Gotcha. And the trash removal, I think you helped me on that. You're not talking about hiring a company to remediate the site. You're talking about volunteers going out and doing a can pickup or whatever they can happen to see, and remove that, whatever garbage they can remove by hand, and using volunteers to do that as mitigation.
Yes, and we specified by hand in the notice of intent application. We don't want to send anything large into the back of the site.
Thank you.
All right, I see a lot of hands up. Robin?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. This the talk about invasives, I just wanted to say I'm happy to help however I can. Both my master's degree and PhD ages ago, I was a plant ecologist. I studied invasive plant species. When I was a professor at UMass, all of my students did their theses on invasive plants. And people have been talking about bittersweet. And one of my students, Josh Ellsworth, was looking at bittersweet growing in open and in shade houses. And in open, he documented 21 feet of vine would grow in a year. So we got to get control of these plants. And I'm retired, so I'm here for you. I'm here to help do any kind of invasive species removal. It's in my heart. There you go.
All right, you're signed up. Steve?
Yeah, Steve Sullivan, the Highway Department and the tree warden. And there's been a lot of talk about planting. And I just want to let the committee know that as part of the purview of the tree warden, it's not only pruning and taking down high-risk trees, it's also planting. And I have already spoken with some of the library building committee's members, and I learned that for 1 year, there can't be any volunteer planting. But I've already planned on encumbering money so that in 366 days after the building is completed, there will be more planting going on, and the plants will be supplied by the tree warden.
Great. That's wonderful. Thank you. That sounds great. Amanda?
Hi, thank you. I just have a question about the supplemental data concerning the big library. Supposedly the design plan that was originally put forth. They mentioned that they were the alternative option 3 scheme. It was a roof area of 7225 square foot that they were talking about, and the gross building footprint is 6164 square foot, not including additional outdoor meeting space with overhangs. Actually, the 7225 or 20 is referred to twice in the NOI as a building footprint, not roof area. And even if it was a roof measurement, you'd be kind of comparing apples to oranges, since the 4,400 square foot plan is a foundation measurement. So I don't really understand that. Also, they claim that this original layout was prepared in May of 2023, was the original schematic design plan developed by the design team and reviewed with the library committee. Well, there was only one meeting of the LBC in May last year, May 9th, and they didn't talk about design work at all. The LBC design subcommittee, though, met on April 26th and discussed a design, and the square footage was shown to be 5,971 square foot, not 6,164. So I don't understand that either. So the 6164 showed up at a June 6th meeting when the LBC discussed the $9.8 million cost estimate they received on that particular design. That was the first and only time I saw this number. There were no other meetings of the LBC or its design subcommittee between the 26th of April and the 6th of June. So I don't know what happened there. And I've reviewed the minutes and recordings. So all of this downsizing was done specifically to reduce costs. So I'm just wondering if someone can explain to me how this is mitigation, because I assume that's why it's listed here. It never really was a proposal. It just was sort of a 5490 was always what we were told. That's what the MBLC was told. It did get blown up a bit when the LBC started kind of adding things here and there. But I don't recall it ever being something that was really in the works. So that's my question. Thank you.
All right, I see that Mary Ann has her hand up. She probably knows a lot about the different designs of the building.
Yeah, I had a hard time following Amanda, and I didn't have my hand up for that, but I can just try and say, you know, we wrote a building program, which is a sort of a guideline to architects describing the elements of a library that would meet the needs of the town. Because we are not architects, that building program didn't include some of the spaces that we of course couldn't know about, like a water service room or things. And in a building program, so this is going way back to before we got the grant. You know, and in a building program, you add an additional 30% for what are considered unassigned spaces, but it's still a guideline, not a written in stone document. And then our designers were hired and we started working together to design a library that would meet the town's needs on our site. And you know, and we designed a library that would have been just fabulous, although some people didn't like the design. And we really tried to stay outside of the wetland buffer zone as much as we possibly could in an interest of, you know, respecting our very important wetland resources, and also meeting the town's library needs. And we found that that was just too expensive, both the size of the building and the site work involved with siting the library that far back. So we moved the library closer to the road. And in doing that, we saved, you know, more than $1 million just in the site work. And we made it smaller. And by moving it closer to the road, we sited it in all previously disturbed area. And it allows us to not disturb, you know, what's also previously disturbed area, but some forest that has regrown further south on the site. So, so yes, we are further into the buffer zone. But we're still avoiding impacting the wetland, and we've reduced the size of the building and the grounds of the building to minimize those impacts to the buffer zone as much as we think is reasonably possible. And you know, and the architects and the library building committee kind of talk about the library in one way. And then the civil engineers, who are Fuss and O'Neill and Amy and Matt Cassane, and other people on their team, kind of talk about the library from a different point of view. And when you talk about stormwater management, I've just learned this recently, they talk about the roof. And so then we're talking about roof and we're talking about footprint, and those are different numbers. And really what we've been focusing on is the elements of the design that meet the goals of the library building program, which this very thoughtfully designed program does. So I think that's the best I can do in answering Amanda's question. Does anybody else have other questions because of all I just said?
Marianne, may I jump in? I'm with Dominic Witt with Odenzello Architecture. I think your explanation was great, and I just wanted to kind of reinforce what you said. I think as it relates to the NOI submission specifically, critical to everybody here is that Fuss and O'Neill refers to the building footprint as the roof footprint. And it's a semantics about what you are calling the footprint of the building. So the area of the building is the roof, and for stormwater design, it is the size of the roof, which is the 7,000 square foot number. And during design, the building changes in program. So we have many presentations where the building gets massaged. So there are many different square footages that get presented. So that is just a part of the process. And I just wanted to clarify that as well. There's also gross footprint area and net footprint area, which is what Marianne was alluding to. So there's the actual outside of the building and then the programmatic spaces within it. That, that's another consideration of different evaluations of what the building square footages actually are. I hope that helps. Thanks again, Marianne.
Thanks, Dominic.
I think, I don't know, Amanda, do you have another question having to do with the answers that we just got?
Yeah, thanks, Beth. Yeah, just quick. So the 4,400 square foot measurement, what exactly is that then, please? Thank you.
That is the gross building footprint. That's
Which is?
the current plan for that's a part of the DD design.
Is that exterior walls in, or is that another roof measurement? That's what I want to know.
That is the building footprint, so the extent of the exterior walls.
Okay, so footprint. Okay, that's what I thought.
Thank you.
All right, Marianne, did you have another question? No.
It's from so long ago, it was a comment and we can just let it go. Okay.
Okay. I see Jill Marland has her hand up.
Yeah. The incursion into the aura, is that for the well?
I believe the well does go into inside the 50-foot. But there's a few other parts of the project that go into, they're in the aura and go within the first 50 feet.
All right.
Yeah, just to clarify, the well is right outside of the 50 foot right now, but very right there, close.
I'm sorry, can you elaborate?
The well is within the 50 to 100 foot aura. I just wanted to clarify the location.
I just asking whether the incursion that was spoken of previously tonight, does that include the incursion into the aura for the well?
Yes.
So that was already talked about tonight.
It's
Because
part of-
I missed that. Beth?
Yeah.
Missed that.
Yeah, I think we've been focusing a lot on what's in the inner 50. So the aura is really 100 feet from the wetland boundary. Everything within 100 feet from the wetland boundary is considered the aura or the 100-foot buffer zone. And the Shutesbury regulations have sort of the first 50 feet is really considered no disturb, has more protection. And so we've been looking at which parts of the project go inside that 50-foot. And apparently, as April just said, the actual trenching to where the well is and where the well is itself is between 50 and 100. So it's not within that inner 50 feet.
Okay, so you're not concerned. Okay, thank you.
Not as much. Yep. All right. I don't see any other questions at this time. Commissioners, do we have any other questions?
No,
No. All right, do we want to close the public hearing at this point? If there
Can
really
I
aren't
ask
any-
on that, Beth, so I think there are a couple of things that we said that we would condition in the permit around, again, I think around the planting, the invasive planting plan. And I heard April talk about the trash removal and trying to quantify where that would be. And I'm wondering if we close it and then we have questions on what is provided, if we'd be able to get that information or answer it. That's my only concern with closing.
Yeah, I think there are some outstanding questions that we may just want to get agreement from the town on.
Is that something we can potentially respond to right now? The specific questions?
I
Sure.
Well, I think we asked, and I don't think you had the information now. We were talking about like an invasive plan. I think I asked about what was there and what you would do and how that would be quantified and what would success be. And I don't think you have that ready now, do you?
We don't, and the original intention is that we wouldn't. But I think if it's possible for the commission to write a condition that all those details need to be provided before any actions are taken, that's a way, that we seek your approval and work with the commission before actually doing anything. Just because, we don't have an invasive species survey right now. Right now is not a great time to do it. So kind of the baseline of starting there might be a little difficult right now, but we want to make sure that we're committed to that and provide the information that you request. And I think during the last wetland restoration notice of intent, there were specific conditions in that order of conditions about the monitoring. So if something's provided similar to that, I know we provided a detailed memo in response to that condition. And I think that's reasonable to do for this as well.
Yeah, so I think maybe we're looking for agreement from the applicant to include a condition for an invasive removal plan that would include details of the size, the area that'll be removed, the methods that will be removed, how often would be removed, and this would have to be approved by the commission. And
could do
then
that.
we're also, okay, excellent. Then we're also looking for, I think we'll have a condition in that the trash removal again needs to be done, but again, a plan really has to be approved by the commission in terms of the square footage and the method and maybe what's out there right now. And then in terms of the plantings, it seemed like everybody was in agreement that if we included a condition that the plantings need to be done within the first planting season following the end of construction, that seems to make sense to me.
Yeah,
That's
I
okay.
think the only addition I'd make or ask for Beth would be the survival and the replanting if necessary, if there's less than 80% survival after X period of time. I had thrown out 5 years. I don't know if that's reasonable or not, but that's.
Yeah, I think most of the wetland restoration plans, I guess that I've seen, it's more 2 years. I think that seems more appropriate, but Mary Ann, do you have comments on those? Oh, you're muted.
Just as far as the planting the first season after the end of construction, and And so I would like some clarification about season, because some things you can plant in July and they'll do okay. And some things, like we don't, construction could end in May, and then we could have May and June to plant things. And construction could end in, so if construction ended in July, it might make more sense to plant some things in October, right?
Right.
So like, as, so if we could just have, we have some really good gardeners involved in this thing, and I'm a less good gardener, but still a successful gardener. Things I plant don't die, usually, but sometimes they do, but mostly they don't. So I do know when to plant things, and I think we should just have that flexibility of planting things so they can survive,
Right. I mean, I think it would be generally, we could even specify the months, but then we can also say, or dependent on the species, have
Okay,
that kind of
yeah.
language in there where it's,
Okay,
in the
Right.
traditional planting seasons. However, if it's a type of plant that's better to be planted in August, then that's when, you should plant it
Okay.
or something. But
Okay.
I think the idea is to have a time frame that's saying, do it as soon as possible.
yeah, Okay.
Whenever construction ends, it has to be done as soon as you can,
And
Right.
our tree warden did also say that he was going to be helping with that and using town money for that too. So he's going to be on it along with us. And so he'll help to make those plantings successful.
Great. That
Would it
sounds good.
be helpful to say like within or like by the end of the full growing season after construction? I don't know if that makes sense to say, okay, if the project ends in May, you don't have to finish planting by October. You have October of next year, so you can start, maybe one fall and then you have a spring and a fall the next year.
I like that. I'm more
Yeah,
concerned about what's living a couple years after they're planted. My thumb is not as green as yours, Mary Ann, so.
we can't all be, I'm sure you have skills I don't have, Scott. So,
My mother told me I did.
okay.
Penny, are you commenting on plantings?
I am commenting on planting. I have a strong vested interest in planting, being a master gardener and having spent a lot of time working on planting native plants at my own house. So this is an important part of the project to me, but I do want to say that one of our cost saving strategies is to try to plant some of these plantings with town volunteers with the help of our town highway superintendent. But in order to do that, we have to have finished construction for a year. We're not allowed to do that as volunteers on the site. And so we have been hoping to phase in plants. They would all be in by the time the order of condition, the 3-year period expires. But my hope has been that you would allow us to plant things sequentially so we could incur huge cost savings by doing it ourselves. And I will give you, for an example, it's specified that it will cost us $1,800 to plant a tree if it's done by contractors on the site. So just, I don't know how that factors into your thought. I know it's not your purview to consider money, but the budget for the library is extraordinarily tight.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, we can add some language having to do with that sort of a thing to allow, like you said, sequential planting over a certain time period, but then have a ultimate ending, an ultimate date from the end of construction where all the plants are in, I guess.
Absolutely.
to-
I mean,
just
of
to
course,
make
you would
sure they
not,
get in.
You would not issue an order of, a certificate of compliance unless everything was done at that point.
All right, fully vegetated.
Right.
Okay. That sounds all right. Mary Lou, you have a comment?
Yes, just a matter of point of clarification to identify the tree warden, who is also the highway department supervisor. If that could be made clear to the public. Do you know, because Missy Lane is saying tree warden like
But if
some
we-
anonymous person.
Steve Sullivan is our tree warden, and
Excuse me,
I-
I'm not finished, Elaine. And the people here are not perhaps clear who this tree warden is. Also, the gentleman, Mr. Sullivan, is the same person who informed the public of the immense debris and trash, etc., which I'm hearing is still perhaps an issue that has not been addressed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Mary Lou. My name is Stephen Sullivan, and I am the Highway Department Superintendent and the tree warden, as I mentioned before I talked about planting.
Thank you, Steve. You needn't speak to me personally. I was addressing the public, but thank you.
All right. So I feel like the conditions that at least that we've been talking about, it sounds like would be all right to include as conditions in terms of what the applicant thinks. Good. So I'm all right with closing the hearing, I guess. Robin and Scott, do you have any more questions? Do you have any other requests for things that we can't get answered tonight, or are you all right closing the hearing?
I'm okay.
Yeah, I'm good closing the hearing, Beth. I think we'll just need to word the conditions about getting this information so that we can clarify what's in the plan with the applicant if we need to. So
Mhm.
that caveat, I'm good to close it.
Yeah,
Okay. Then can we have a motion to close the hearing?
I make a motion to close the hearing.
Close the public hearing for the
Close-
Shutesbury Public Library notice of intent.
Yes, close the public hearing for the Shrewsbury Library notice of intent.
Okay. Second,
I'll second.
all right. Harrington,
Aye.
Khan,
Aye.
and Wilson, aye. All right, so we can't take any more public comment or ask questions. We can deliberate. And I know that Miriam traditionally would actually bring up the order of conditions. I feel like with this, I think we work on a draft that we bring to the next meeting and we go over the order of conditions at the next meeting.
Yeah.
That's how I feel a little more comfortable doing. But we can, if there's anything you feel like talking about right now, do you feel like the conditions that we just discussed are good in addition to all the general conditions?
Yes, I do. I'm not sure there's much more I have to deliberate on. I think we need to get into crafting what we're asking of the applicant for those different plans that we discussed.
Yeah, okay. Penny, you have your hand up?
I'm just wondering about the timing. I believe you have 21 days to issue the order of conditions, and your next meeting is not for a month. How will you handle that?
That is a good point. We will have to set up another meeting. we can do a 2-week, we can do a 2-week meeting. Would that work out for Robin, Scott, everybody?
I think so. I'd have to check my calendar, but should be okay.
You're saying February 22nd? At like,
Yeah, I think it might have to be, actually, is there any way people can do it next week, next Thursday,
on the 15th?
the 15th? Yeah, because that next week is school break and there's a lot of things going on, I think, for a lot of people.
Well, I know enough to keep away from Valentine's Day.
Right, so we'll do it on Thursday.
I think I'm free on the 15th.
I think I'm free.
You want to do it then? At what time, Beth?
That sounds good. Let's do 7 o'clock.
Okay.
All right, great.
We could wrap that one up in less than an hour.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, this will be the only thing on the agenda. Well, that'll be a short one. All right. Thank you all for coming, and we will, post next week's meeting, and hope to see you all back again. And moving on with our agenda.
Thank you.
Thank
very much.
you.
Thank you.
Thanks for answering all our questions. All right. Next on our agenda is we have a vacancy on the commission, and we've gotten interest from 4 different people, which is great. It's wonderful to see that people are willing to volunteer to be on the commission. What I was kind of hoping to accomplish tonight with that is to welcome you and say that we invited you so that you could see how a Shutesbury Conservation Commission meeting runs. I think some of you already have experience with Shutesbury Commission meetings, and maybe other town commission meetings, but I just thought it would be good. And then I was hoping each of you could just introduce yourself and very quickly, in a short way, say why you're interested in being on the commission, and then ask us any questions that you might have. And then I think what we're going to do is actually send out a questionnaire to all of you via email, and just to gather more information on your experience and yeah, basically your experiences, and then review those, and then we'll be working with the select board to set up a kind of a joint meeting to vote on the member. I think that's how it's going to work out. So that's kind of the strategy and the plan. So so welcome. Why don't we start with Tom? I see you there. Just introduce yourself and say why you want to be on the commission.
Thank you. Hi. How are you doing? And thanks for inviting me tonight. My name is Tom Seifert. I've lived in town for about, well, since 2017, so almost 7 years. And I'm lucky enough to find myself having a job that gives me free time to do something like be on the Conservation Commission. I chose to live in Shutesbury largely because of its landscape, of everything it can offer with its nature. I live on Lake Wyola and really appreciate that body of water and its importance to our town, along with all the other water everywhere else in town. Yeah, so my husband and I both really like living here. We have a dog that we take everywhere we can in the woods, and so I want to be able to contribute to that, and I am in the fortunate position to have the time to do it.
Great. Do you have any questions for us at this point?
I don't think so. I appreciate that. But I feel rather familiar already with the Concom, and thank you. Not at the moment.
Okay, great. Thank you. I see Bob Douglas. I think you're muted, Bob.
How about now?
Yep.
Can you hear me okay? Great.
Yep.
Thank you, Beth, and congratulations for getting through that. I know it's been quite a slog for the library project. I appreciate all the time that you put into it. That was a massive undertaking. My name's Bob Douglas. I grew up in Leverett and Shutesbury. I still have property and connections there, and I work in the conservation field. I have a degree in wetland science for biology, and have worked in the Everglades, as well as for the last 25 years I've been worked as a conservation director or agent in Massachusetts municipalities. I love Shutesbury. It's really kind of my happy place, and I would love to be able to bring some of the things that I've done in my work in other towns to Shutesbury, to hikes, grant money, things like that. So anyway, I really appreciate the opportunity to meet with you tonight and apply for this position. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Do you have any questions for us or?
No, thank you.
No. Okay, good. Kevin?
Hi, Kevin Weir, 760 Pratt Corner Road. And again, thank you for letting me, say something tonight. My main reason, I saw there was a vacancy, and at the time I didn't know there were other people interested, and I know how hard the work is for the Conservation Commission. And, I'd been off, I was on the commission about 10 years ago, 12 years ago, and had a lot of work that I couldn't really spend the time that I needed to. And I had a lot of health issues, but now I'm in a better place. And I thought, well, if there's an opening, I'd like to come back and serve the town. I know a lot about forestry and a lot about farming and a lot about regulations. And part of what I would want to do if I came back to the Conservation Commission would be to really get back into taking the Mass Conservation Commission trainings, because it's really all about the regulations. It's not about personal feelings about any particular subject. It's understanding what the regulations are. But I'd throw my hat in with everybody else. And I've been here for about, let's see, I met my wife 50 years ago, and she's been here 70 years. So I got some family history with Shutesbury. Thanks.
Great, thank you. Do you have any questions for us?
No, I just appreciate all you do. I mean, that's really, how well you think about the issues and present yourself. It's great. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And Jan?
Thanks for the chance to introduce myself. Let me see. I've got a biofeedback thing going. 1 second. Okay, that's better, right? No, that's not quite right.
Leave.
Okay.
A bit of an echo.
Yeah, I had you on 2 screens because I couldn't get the picture up on the other one. So by way of introduction, I have been living in Shutesbury for nearly 30 years. I have been a fishery biologist. I retired from the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service after over 30 years. And before that, I had an undergraduate degree in aquatic environments, which was environmental science, and minors in biology and geology. So I kind of know my way around natural sciences. So it's sort of natural for me, I think, to fall into that notion of volunteering for the commission and helping to continue to help restore natural resources and protect them. Kind of interested in getting more deeply involved in the commission. I don't necessarily understand everything you've been up to. but I want to see how you get to your goals. In having worked for the federal government, I get the idea of rules and how you have to work within the parameters that you're given. I think I can help with that. And I'd like to see how the commission fits into the bigger system of natural resource protection. And finally, you know, I guess I realized that it's a lot about working with people and being fair and practical in trying to achieve good outcomes.
Great. Do you have any questions for us?
And not really. I guess I do wonder what kind of training is provided. What you have to.
Yeah, somebody mentioned it. So the Massachusetts Conservation Commission, MACC, offers trainings. They have they have 2 conferences a year, and they also have a whole set of training for conservation commissioners. They also just provide a whole lot of other educational information. You can go to their webpage. When you become a commissioner, you get sort of an account with them so that you can use their documents and things, and they have a lot of trainings. So that's the best training out there for commissioners. All right, thank you all for coming and introducing yourselves. And like I said, we'll be sending out sort of a questionnaire to get information, experience, and different questions. But so we look forward to hearing from you and seeing you again.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Oh, somebody has their hand up. Charlene, you can raise your hand on your computer too, but yes, go ahead.
I'm sorry, I left one location and I'm in another one, so I missed, unfortunately, the end of the library discussion, and it must have been introductions that, are there 4 people looking at that open position on the
Yeah.
commission? Okay, that's what I thought. I'm just, I wrote an email to the chair of the select board, very concerned that I actually read something that was a letter. Did you receive a letter from a solar group that exists in town about the 4 candidates? Can I ask you if you received that?
We did receive a comment letter. Yep.
I don't know most of the people there because we're seasonal resident. My husband and I are seasonal residents in Shutesbury, but I'm very concerned that 3 of the people that were mentioned seem to all be looked at in the same way, in a very positive way. And one of the people had a lot of degrading and derogatory remarks made about them in this letter. And it's been sent out apparently to a lot of people, including you. I don't know if the select board got it. I assume they did. But I don't feel that it's fair to you as a commission to have to look at letters of this type, obviously to influence you against one and to consider 3 others. So I'm just voicing my concern as a private citizen. I've always been, I've been on a number of town committees in the town of Deerfield where we live. And one of the things that I feel is very important, just because of my own experiences, the diversity of thinking, the differences of opinion are a very healthy way to run a town committee. If you have people that think all the same and vote all the same, obviously it's to that group's benefit to get anything they want, but it's not really giving the town, all the town people who have differing opinions, a fair chance at having a fair look at whatever becomes a matter of concern. So I'm very disturbed by that letter. It sounds like they're a very strong special interest group in the town. I have no idea who they are. I don't know what their function is. All I know is it's, in my mind, just terrible and horrific that one of the 4 people has been singled out to be made to look like they would be a very, very bad person on this commission, when in fact, nothing really was said about the other 3. And when you're looking to replace people on a commission, you're looking for the people who can offer information. If they have a difference of opinion than other people on the commission, that's a great thing. I mean, I hope we are living in a world and in a society, and certainly in Shutesbury, where differences of opinion are welcome, not protected by creating a group of people that are like thinkers and not open to new thinking. So that's my point. And I know a lot of people who are reading that correspondence from, as I said, this group. It's disturbing. And I'm this poor person who is totally degraded in that report. I feel bad for the person because I'm not sure they even know this letter was sent out to a number of people. So please take that into account. The better the diversity, and Shutesbury, I always felt, was a community that welcomed diversity. And in what I'm seeing in this letter, it's looking to narrow the viewpoints to be more singular, and that would be unfortunate. Thank you.
Yeah, I really appreciate your comments, and I feel like just the way I'm looking at how we're going to choose somebody, I'm trying to be as fair as possible and have a good process, because I think that's the way that you are fair. And I 100% agree that we shouldn't go around degrading people, period.
Thank you. I appreciate
So,
that.
yeah, so we've got our process set up. We're going to send out questionnaires to all 4 members to really gather some good information on them. It's so wonderful to have 4 people who want
You're
to be on
lucky.
the committee. Yeah, we're
Especially
very
in a
lucky.
small community, you're very fortunate. But I think this commission has an important part to do with the community. And I think people, when they see that, want to be a part of it. So and as I said, the more diverse your thinkers, the better and I don't know you, I don't know any of the other people. I've listened tonight and learned a lot, to be honest with you, but I just would hate to see a letter of this type become influential in any way, shape, or form, so that 3 people are in the positive and 1 person won't even be considered. And that would be more than unfair, first of all, but it's totally not right at all to do that to anybody. And it's so obvious how that letter was written, what was being said. So thank you again. I'm glad you're going to be fair.
We're going to try to be fair. Yes. Mike S., you have your hand up?
Actually, it's his wife, Anna, that's on the phone. So yes, my name's Anna Mancebo, and I'd like to echo what Charlene just said, Beth. And I took notes of the people that were introducing themselves, and there are 2 things, actually 3, that I'd like people to consider on the commission. And that is, and I think the person that you vote for should be a resident and not a part-time person or live elsewhere. I believe that no one should be affiliated with any type of special interest group, and that includes writing any type of op-eds or post information on Nextdoor, which could be seen as inflammatory or one-sided. And I think that would be a very tough way to maintain any impartiality to anything that comes before the commission. So I would ask that the commission consider those things that I just brought up. Thank you.
Thank you. Sharon Weisenbaum.
Hi, yeah, thank you. I would like to say that my impression of the letter was that people are referring to is that it was pointing out factual information that by itself led to a conclusion that this candidate was unqualified, that it was just basically the facts. There was nothing degrading about it. And in fact, the applicant was fairly degrading toward the Conservation Commission in the comments. I'd also like to point out that the applicant in question, as well as the people who have spoken up so far, are all part of a special interest group, which is the Lake Wyola Association. And that Smart Solar Shutesbury is not at all a special interest group. It's only interested in the health, safety, and welfare of the water and roads and environment. And so I'd like to counter that idea that the Smart Solar Shutesbury is special interest and that the Lake Wyola Association is actually that. Thank you.
Karen, I'd like to address that.
you.
That is not true. We are a nonprofit, a 501c3. We are not a special interest group. You are not correct. You are not correct.
All right, let's.
Who was just speaking, please? Who just told Miss Sharon she was not correct? I'm sorry, Beth. I don't know who that was.
It says Mike S. So if you want to say who you are.
Thank you.
And just in response, I would say that even if it's a 501 nonprofit, it actually, in essence, is a special interest group. Thank you.
Okay, Penelope. Oh, you're muted.
I wanted to ask you to move along. As a former moderator in the town of Shutesbury, I'm very sensitive to allowing people to get personal or get into matters that have no business being discussed in a meeting of a commission like this. I commend you on the work you've done tonight, on the process you've set up, and I encourage you to accept no more comments on individuals or organizations. I feel it's very inappropriate.
Thank you. I agree. So I think we're done. I think we have our process. And we're actually done with our meeting unless Robin or Scott, you have anything else? No, so we need a motion to adjourn.
I so move.
Second. I think she seconded it.
You did.
All right. Khan,
Aye.
Harrington,
Aye.
there you go. Wilson, aye. All right. Good night, everyone. We'll see you
Good night.
next Thursday.
Good night.
Thank you.
Good night.